Okay, so in this video, I just want to talk about a recent conversation between Sam Harris and Siddhartha Mukherjee. Now, the Making Sense a podcast by Sam Harris is excellent. I highly recommend all of you to subscribe to this podcast. Now, in a recent conversation with Siddhartha Mukherjee, they talk mainly about COVID-19 and the response of America to this virus, but I'm not really going to talk about that. In the end of this conversation, Siddhartha Mukherjee talks about the immunology of this virus. So I just want to focus on that because my previous video talked about immunology of SARS-CoV-2, and I just want to focus on immunology in this video too. Now, just a little bit about Siddhartha Mukherjee. Now, Siddhartha Mukherjee is the author of The Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer, which was the winner of 2011 Pulitzer Prize. He has also written The Loss of Medicine and The Gene and Intimate History. Now, he is an assistant professor of medicine at Columbia University and a cancer physician and researcher. So that's a little bit about Siddhartha Mukherjee. Now, in this podcast, as I told you, they mainly focus on America's response to COVID-19, but in the end, he talks about the immunology part of COVID-19, and I just wanted to talk about that. I wanted to summarize what he told, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting his views here. Now, in this, what he says is he talks about a few factors, the immunological factors related to COVID-19. Now, the first thing he said was, now some people infected with SARS-CoV-2 have low levels of antibodies, okay, the titer antibodies. Now, I think he was talking about, I did a little bit of digging, and I think he was talking about the Robiani et al. Study, which was published in recently in the journal Nature. Of course, he did not provide with citations because it's just an interview, but he did mention that this was a study done at the Rockefeller University, and that's true. The Robiani et al. Study was done in, mainly the authors were from Rockefeller University. Now, what they did in this study was they collected plasma from 149 people infected with COVID-19, and they found that uh, only few people actually had high levels of antibody. Okay, so less than 50 antibodies were present in 33% of samples. Less than 1,000 antibodies were present in 79% of samples, and high levels of antibodies above 5,000 was present only in 1% of samples. So Siddhartha Mukherjee was saying that there's a possibility that these guys with low levels of antibodies, there's a chance that they can be reinfected with COVID-19 again. And now we have, more recently, we've seen studies showing that some people, one in Hong Kong and one in the United States, they were actually infected with COVID-19 again. So this might be the reason. Now, he also talks about the existence of memory T cells reactive to SARS-CoV-2 in some people who never been infected with SARS-CoV-2. Now, I've already done a video on this. Okay, so I encourage all of you to listen to this video where I talk about some people who never been infected with SARS-CoV-2. They actually have pre-existing T cells which were reactive to SARS-CoV-2. Now, the reason is that they might have been infected with other type of coronaviruses. There are 7 different types of coronaviruses, and SARS-CoV-2 is just one type of coronavirus. So maybe since the genetic material is similar between these coronaviruses, so they might have been infected with other types of coronaviruses, and so they have these memory T cells reactive to SARS-CoV-2. Anyway, I highly recommend that you listen to this other video that I've done. Also, he says that in people with infected with SARS-CoV-2, there's a dysfunction of the innate immune system. So remember, there are two types of immune systems in the body. One is the innate system, which provides the first line of defense, and the other is the adaptive immune system. So he says that in people with SARS-CoV-2, there could be a dysfunction of this innate immune system. Now, I tried to find the study. I think he really is he's referring to a study done by Bali Pulendran. Now, this study was done at Stanford University. So I'm just going to provide you a link to the study that he was talking about. Now, what I found fascinating about this summary, about this conversation is in the end, he talks about two phases in the body that fail in people infected with SARS-CoV-2, and that might be the reason that some people infected with SARS-CoV-2 end up having severe disease and may also die. Okay, so the first one is the type 1 interferons. Okay, so the type 1 interferons, now the interferons are just proteins which regulate the immune system activity. Now they are not produced by some people, or there is a impaired production of type 1 interferons in some people with COVID-19, and that can lead to a severe disease. Now, the second one is there could be an immunological misfiring. Okay, so again, the type 1 interferon study, I think he's referring to a study, a large scale study, which was done in Paris by Hajjaj et al. Okay, and the second thing he talked about was, so remember, he talked about two phases in which the body fails. The first one is an impaired or not producing the type 1 interferons by some people. And the second one is immunological misfiring. Now, I think he's referring to a study done by Luca et al. In 2020. Now, this study, he talks about, now what really happens here is there is an immunological misfiring. So they're able to control the virus initially, but in later stages, what happens is the innate immune system. Remember again, just a review, the body is made of two systems. One is the innate and ancient immune system, and the other one is an adaptive immune system. Now, what happens in some people is there's an immunological misfiring, and the innate immune system starts firing uncontrollably, and that can lead to a severe disease in some people with COVID-19. Now, in the end, he asks, now these two types of systems, right, where there is an impaired type 1 interferons and immunological misfirings, are they distinct? Are they overlapping? Or does one lead to the other? So it's really important to understand the immunological science behind this so that you can start treating it. So do you want to treat it together, or do you want to treat them separately? Okay, so that's an important question to answer and do more research on this. I think that was a fascinating conversation between Sam Harris and Siddhartha Mukerjee. I highly recommend to subscribe to Sam Harris, first of all, because the conversations are always interesting on important topics. And also, please listen to this conversation between Sam Harris and Siddhartha Mukerjee, which is available on Making Sense podcast. I hope I apologize if I have misrepresented what Siddhartha Mukerjee was trying to say in this interview. But I hope this helps. And also, I'll try to provide the sources for these in my video description. Thank you very much for listening.